Hello everyone, we're back with another pod fic. This is called I Saw the TV Glow, and back goes Shaking with Tara by GraceForDrowning. Please go check out the other fics. Summary. The worst thing Izuku can do right now is make any reaction to the fact he just felt Katsuki's entire body jolt next to him as they watch a horror movie on the couch with the rest of the class. He didn't look at Katsuki, but he can put his deathly glare piercing his soul. This is almost 2,700 words long, and it is a one-shot, so enjoy! It took months for Katsuki to finally admit to the rest of the class that he and Izuku were dating. Well, they had been dating for a few months by the time he finally came clean after constant pestering from everyone. He would have preferred to keep their romantic escapades a secret for much longer, but eventually had to admit that everything when Izuku gave him no other choice. The idea of Katsuki exposing his emotional soft spot to any of them had kept their relationship a closely guarded secret for much longer than Izuku had wanted. He was only able to stomach hiding their endearing glances and interactions behind closed doors for so long before eventually forcing Katsuki into some public displays. Although Izuku had promised that holding hands while walking into class was not that big a deal, he would have earned a much calmer reaction from their class if he had thrown a live grenade into the classroom instead. He had walked through the door with Katsuki trailing close behind in his grasp, which caused all conversations to immediately die. Aizura had yelled something that got the rest of the class started, but Izuku could hardly remember what it was now. All he recalled from that day was Katsuki staring at him with his eyes narrowed into slits. Since then, Katsuki had closed himself back up and throttled the amount of trust he put into Izuku's decisions about their relationship. You know, Kachan, you're human just like the rest of us. Holding back your emotions and hiding feelings for each other for the rest of them isn't doing you any favours. Izuku had once again tried to reason with Katsuki as they walked down the stairs to the common room for movie night. I'm not hiding anything from those losers that they need to see, the blonde scoffed. What you and I have going on is not for them to look at like some public spectacle. We're not fucking a freak show for them to stare at with slack jaws, Izuku. He felt Izuku give a reassuring squeeze around his hand, but that had failed to make Katsuki give up any ground on the argument. I'm not saying we need to start making out in front of him or anything, but giving an occasional smile shouldn't be too much to ask for. I'll consider it. Katsuki sounded like he was contemplating getting a root canal rather than a public display of affection, and Izuku decided he would make no further progress. They entered the common room without another word to each other. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, Aizura turned to face their direction. His eyes lit up as he looked down at their handhold and prepared to make a comment. Izuku quickly shook his head and darted his eyes between Katsuki and the redhead. Aizura thankfully took the hint without catching Katsuki's attention and returned his attention to the television. I was thinking we could watch a horror movie tonight. Anyone have a good one in mind? He looked around for opinions as Katsuki and Izuku proceeded to a couch all the way at the back of the group. The blonde brought them to a stop in front of furniture, staring down at Denki, who was too preoccupied with munching on popcorn to take immediate notice of them. He eventually turned to his side and then stared at them with his cheeks full of his half-chewed snack. Move. Katsuki muttered on his breath without a trace of emotion. Izuku could tell that Denki intended to fight the request, but he blew his eyes wide to get the point across that he best do as requested. With a dramatic sigh and an eye roll, he admitted his defeat and gathered his popcorn. He plopped himself down next to Mina, who immediately grabbed a handful of the bowl without even asking. You don't always have to be so mean to people, Kachan. It's amazing how often they'll do as you ask if you're nice about it. You don't always have to stare at them like you're going to cut their throats. I don't even like giving them an option to ignore me. Katsuki throws his body onto the couch, dragging Izuku down with him. As their shoulders pressed together, Izuku took the opportunity to snuggle up against his boyfriend. That interaction lasted a few microseconds before he was pushed away. Katsuki did not even have the decency to make eye contact as his hand pushed Izuku away until there was a comfortable gap of air between them. "Come on," Izuku whispered. "We can't snuggle during movie night. That's probably the most stereotypical time to do it." "You're lucky I'm still holding us holding hands." "Are you still upset about me outing us to the class? Come on, it's been a few weeks since then. You can't hold that against me forever." Katsuki did not bother dignifying the accusation with a response. "Do you really think that you can keep this up forever, Kachan?" "I will, as long as they keep treating us like an exhibit at the zoo." "I could force him into not worrying you about it anymore." This only earned a sarcastic snicker from Katsuki. "Oh yeah, and just what exactly are you going to do to enforce that?" "I don't like giving them an option to ignore me." "Don't use my own fucking words against me." As much as he tried to force a tone of irritation as he spoke, Izuku stole a quick glance to the side and found the ghost of a smile pulling at Katsuki's lips. He gave the blonde a hand squeeze as Asia finally selected a movie. The screen began rolling the opening credits, casting the dark room into a soft blue glow from the television. "What the hell is this, Kirishima?" Katsuki barked. The redhead turned around as a flying saucer shot across the screen and plummeted to the earth. "It's about aliens and it hides itself among people. Trust me, you're going to love it. It's suspenseful and gory." Katsuki huffed. "Should have stayed in my fucking room." The first hour of the film elicited all sorts of reaction from the class, as Aisha and a few of the other boys cheered on the violence and body horror in all its gut-wrenching glory. Me and other girls turned their noses up in disgust. This resulted in more than one conversation brewing in the background about revoking Asia's privileges to choose a movie in the foreseeable future. "Are you enjoying the movie so far?" Izuku whispered. "Not really." Katsuki did not shift his attention from the television, watching as one of the characters threatened the group with a flamethrower and a bundle of dynamite. "We can go back to my room if you don't want to watch any more of this." "Why, so you can try to snuggle up against me on your bed?" "Nice try. I'm not falling for that one again." Izuku rolled his eyes and pretended to be offended at such an accusation, despite knowing damn well that Katsuki had hit the nail on the head, at least for now. Holding hands would have to suffice. Izuku was thankful that Katsuki had not pulled away by this point and gave a gentle squeeze of reassurance before returning his attention to the movie. At some point during their bickering sessions, one of the characters began to have a heart attack and was thrown onto the metal table, and his shirt was torn open. Someone else prepared a defibrillator and prepared to administer the shocks. Then he made a smart-ass comments about how he could have done the same task much quicker and with great ease, which most of the class just ignored. Just as the paddles were brought down, the man's chest split open and revealed a set of mangled teeth right next to Izuku. He felt Katsuki do something that he had not expected in the slightest. Katsuki jolted. This was followed by a stunned gasp just low enough for Izuku to barely hear. As one of the character's arms were chopped off by the alien's gaping maw, Izuku burned with an urge to turn and face Katsuki, but decided against it. He could feel 2 holes being burned inside of his head from the blonde's death glare, easily getting a message across to not bring any attention to his reaction and make the situation any worse. Izuku kept his attention pointed at the screen where the man's head had separated from his body in a mess of green ooze and hair and skin. It was now extended over the deformed body by some grotesque stem of flesh and viscera. think that's how I pronounce it, letting out an inhuman scream as the other characters began to panic. To his side, Izuku heard a soft ding as felt the vibration carry from Katsuki's wrist into his hand. The heart monitor strapped around his arm flashed a soft warning. No longer able to keep his attention directed forwards, Izuku's eyes darted down to stare at the warning, increased heart rate message that flashed with alternating colours on the screen. He slowly brought his gaze up to Katsuki, who stared at him with intimidation which was already beginning to fracture. Kachan, are you scared? No, Katsuki hissed under his breath to avoid anyone turning in his direction. His red gaze darted between their classmates, making sure no one had caught on to what was occurring between the two of them. It's okay, Kachan, you don't have to be embarrassed. Katsuki ignored him, but Izuku could feel him softly trembling. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's okay to be scared. I'm not scared. Katsuki continued his attempt to sound demanding and control of the direction of their conversation. Izuku saw right through the fast? It might be face. Sorry about that. You're a terrible liar, Kachan. And you always have been. Why the hell would I be lying right now? I don't know, but I can tell that you are. You're biting the corner of your bottom lip. I've realised ever since we started dating that you'll tell. Katsuki opened his mouth to argue against the allegation, but almost immediately snapped it shut without a sound. His hand was ripped from Izuku's grasp, and he huffed softly while crossing both arms over his chest. The blonde sunk back into the couch cushions, his muscles still tense with frustration. Izuku kept his disappointment swallowed down and the force of attention back to the movie. Katsuki would get into moods like this on occasion, and Izuku would have had to come to learn that it was best to just let him ride the emotional tidal wave out. All the progress Izuku attempted to make over the past week had been wiped away in an instant. He was back to square one and tried to enjoy the movie, despite having the nagging thoughts for attempting to push Katsuki too far. The movie continued, now with the group of men gathered and test examples of their blood with lengths of scorching hot wire. After one of the samples failed and caused the men to begin convulsing, Izuku could feel the slight movement next to him on the couch. He stole a quick glance to find Katsuki's body tense with terror as he watched the grotesque display unfold. Izuku had planned on ignoring his boyfriend's reaction this time, but he was shocked to feel a sudden movement. Katsuki leaned over and let his head come to rest against Izuku's shoulder. The mess of blonde hair rustled against his neck, causing Izuku's stomach to warm with a sensation of butterflies. His mind struggled to accept the occurrence at first, and Izuku eventually found the words to vocalize his shocked reaction. Just as he opened his mouth to whisper something, Katsuki's arm wrapped around his waist and pulled Izuku closer. The hand remained clenched firmly on his hip, having finally found something that grounded Katsuki to reality and kept his mounting terror in remission. Izuku's words died on the tip of his tongue. The initial shock of feeling his boyfriend finally be the one to initiate an interaction soon wore off, and Izuku leaned his head to the side. He nuzzled his cheek against Katsuki, which earned a sigh of relief from his boyfriend. The sound must have been just loud enough for Asia to hear, causing him to pivot at the waist and face. With a matter of seconds, his eyes lit up and his mouth pulled into a shut-to smile. Katsuki's gaze remained locked onto the movie, frantically keeping him from noticing his friend's reaction and sending a blast in the red's head direction. Aisha prepared to make a comment but stopped when Izuku flashed him a death glare to not draw any attention to them. He did just as he was instructed, or more likely as he was threatened, and directed himself back to the television. As the film continued, Izuku felt the tension in Katsuki's muscles gradually fade away. He worked up enough courage to push the boundaries even further and wrapped an arm around the boy's blonde shoulder. There was no hesitation. Katsuki's body relaxed even more against his, and Izuku let out a short a soft chuckle only he could hear before tilting his head down to place a kiss on top of the mess of blonde hair. Red irises lifted up to look at him, and Izuku watched as the smile that had been hiding in the faux rage and irritation finally broke through. Katsuki grinned with bliss and let himself fall even further into Izuku's hold as if he were a security blanket. The movie eventually came to an end, and Izuku had still not prepared himself for the onslaught of attention that would inevitably come as his classmates began to stretch in their seats and turn away from the television. More and more eyes eventually landed on the two of them. Not a single one looked away until every person in the common room was staring at Izuku and Katsuki snuggled up on the couch. Izuku could feel a rock, actually more like a boulder, form at the pit of his stomach. He had expected Katsuki to pull away, but was surprised to find him not even make the slightest movement. Then he looked around at everyone and eventually felt the unnecessary need to be the initial person to comment on the situation. He opened his mouth open and he sucked in a breath. The words formed on the tip of his tongue and, "You got a problem or something, Sparky?" Dicky seemed to shrivel up into himself and immediately turned away. Izuku's question was laced with authority that he typically saved for intense training sessions or the heat of a battle. It seemed to have caught everyone off guard, including himself, and Izuku looked around to find everyone's gaze quickly turning away. His classmates directed their attention back to the television as Asia had already begun searching for another movie. As a few students groaned and protested, allowing the redheads to subject themselves to another mortifying cinematic experience, Izuku felt the soft rumble of laughter next to him. Ooh, that was a nice one, calling the sparking like that. I don't think you had it in you. Katsuki whispered. I learnt for the best. The screen went black before another set of opening credits rolled across. As the breaking died down and soon alleviated by thunderous orchestral music, Katsuki shifted slightly and brought his body tighter against Izuku's. I hope this isn't another damn horror movie, he muttered under his breath. I don't know. Having a cold up against me in terror was kind of a nice way to watch a movie. Izuku ran his hands up and down the small of Katsuki's back. His muscles initially tensed beneath his fingertips, but soon melted into touch. Watch yourself, Izuku. I need to protect my cousin. Katsuki attempted to hide his amusement. He left out a soft chuckle before nuzzling his face against Izuku's shoulder. I love you, nerd. I love you too. Holy shit, that was so long on my throat. I really enjoyed this. I read this at like 3 a.m. originally, but yeah. Guess what? This is the first thing I did after coming home from a funeral. Fun. I have nothing else to do, to be fair. So yeah, apart from my homework, I need to do that. Oh, shoot. But I hope you enjoyed. Please go check out the other authors' fics. Greatly appreciate it. Bye, my little clowns, aliens, whatever you want me to call you.